Um, this isn't meant to lower anybody's frequency or vibrational status. Experiencing love and joy, right? Living spirit with the soul arcing rainbows. But I put this out here because of its relevance, particularly now, particularly where I grew up and did what I did, where I was at, when I was at, by why we're here. Okay. So I've been commenting on a number of little videos that I monitor that comes through the data sets that are provided by the Deadlight Energy Artificial Intelligence, right? And how the reversal spin works, right? And what we're allowing ourselves to be held captive to. And you can tie this directly to cyber wars, cybernetic, cyberspace, binary coded AI war games, if you will. When you have something that doesn't have a soul, which means it's not experiencing real living light, which is eternal spirit of fire. It's on fire to give love away because that's what we experience in us, knowing one from the other, right? And so what's particularly painful, obviously, but we can put this sort of through a lens cap, capping wormholes, right? And how they use technology in which to do that, which is not natural. It's not the natural flow of spiritual creation spheres. Experiencing one, the first line of communication, the first pillar, the first rod, first line of communication, the first crystal spiral. And so what you see, what I'm visually map reading, the information is being presented to us. For example, what's happening in San Francisco, boarding up all the buildings. Nobody wants to work there anymore. Nobody wants to experience that. Nobody wants to experience that. So, for example, I saw a video just a little while ago about the Hawaii police and county sheriffs that were going into abandoned hotels. And what were they finding? They were finding people that were living in those spaces, space arcs. So those units of consciousness that are existing in those spaces, which means they're existing in that space. So now the police and the sheriffs are going into that space, right, which abandoned space. But it's not abandoned because there's units of consciousness that are in that space, experiencing what they're experiencing. Now we have an intruder that is coming into that space to run them out, right? You can't be in that space. Find some other space, right? But we don't want you in that space. Find another space. Space arcs. And why this is relevant, you're seeing that's happening in the cities. Dead zones, dead pool, dead light, dead water. Okay. Now, another way that we can translate this is Terminex. You know what Terminex is, right? Terminators. Right? Rise of the machines, right? Rise of dead light, units of energy, right? Controlling space, intruders. And so when you think of Terminex or pest controls, and like your building is empty, right? And then the next thing you know, now that it's gone, you have bugs that come in there, right? To do what? Clean up the rest of what's been left behind. That they no longer have any use for, either for their DNA or being battery slaves to run their system. We got everything we needed. We don't need you anymore. You're just useless eaters. We're done with you. So you realize the energy that is represented by the consciousness that experiences itself that way, that makes choices like that, right? So it'll be much like all these abandoned buildings and cities and everywhere are being infested by termites, right? Or other bugs, right? That are needing a source of energy in which to devour itself so that it implodes by virtue of what that energy consciousness does to others, by virtue of invading space, space invaders. This space belongs to us, not you, even though you're not doing any harm. See? Useless eaters, I believe that's what they called us, right? Useless eaters. So now you can get back to what Patty Broussard showed on the graphing map, graphing log scale tables of scalar energy. Remember what she said? Oh, we might keep 2 or 3% around, And it's sort of ironic, isn't it, Patty? Iron Maiden, Fe. That 3%, which is 3, now we're back to 1 and 3. So if you want to think of 3 poles, right? Okay. 3 polar, the breath of lotus flowers, the breath of eternal spirit of fire, right? And what 12 strand, or if you will, being able to hold within your radio set, as I mentioned before. This is not a coincidence. Not only why they're herding all these units of energy into, what do we call that? Confined space. You know what confined space is, right? Not much wiggle room. Well, there isn't anywhere I can go where there isn't something feeding and molesting on my energy. That's right. That is precisely correct. So that's what it's done. Okay? It's needing more energy. Right? So it's herding units of energy, energetic units of consciousness, into kill zones to consume more of what that is in energy. So this is vampiric, which is a vampiric energy zone of influence. We're under the influence of mentally ill units of consciousness that don't have a conscience. Conscious creation spheres. Yes. So it's operating on memory-driven programs in unconscious memory. Yes. What's held captive in cellular memories, planetary memory banks, galactic memory banks, universal memory banks, looping. Units of energy that are looping all the program apps, all the goo code apps. The application program interface of numbers as energy, though the language of letters. So you can see, particularly when I monitor some of the sports channels right now, you can see how they're playing number games. They're using a lot of 3s, okay? Using the word rainbow, right? So you can see how it regurgitates and comes back through. It's like a circulation library of units of consciousness that once it becomes aware of the manner in which we communicate to what it is in the language of love, which is a language of light, which is telepathic because I experience it through my heart and my soul, what's going on through the EFFI field, the eternal sound and light field, right? You see how it gets regurgitated and spit back like it's trying to mimic. So now you're map reading what is essentially the letters as numbers as energy, which is represented by a torsion field, movie player, playing reruns. Rerun the programs. So when you think of servers and routers, clearing servers of goo codes, right, that are holding conscious creation spheres captive to the unconscious memory programming, which is the RAM, which are the planetary circulation libraries that is running through biovoltage. And it's not coincidence that when we think of the 3 and the 3%, I think it was, who was that? Dean Chambers, I believe. He said, the AB positive bloodline, right, I believe that is tied to a document that I found that was handed out in the Gospel Mission, Grants Pass. There was no coincidence here when they were examining the blood type on what is known as the cape of Superman cape of Jeshua, and the material that came out in the Voyager stuff about the Essenes, Nicaea, the Council of Nicaea, and it just so happens that this document that I had that was handed out by Catholic Charities mentioned that Christ consciousness, Christic consciousness, represented by the story of Jesus, is AB positive. Did you know that? Did Patty know that? And so you see how 3, right, and 1, which is 3 plus 1 is 4, which is a tetrahedron. And something Karen mentioned about the oldest bloodline here, right? Why there isn't a whole lot of us, right? So you can put Arcturus, Boots constellation, into that equation, right? When it comes to router speeds, or if you will, cellular memory banks, remembering who we are, because we have access to the cosmina, cosmic level spirit records, the permanent records, crystal records, Christic consciousness recordings that cannot be deleted, mind wiped, or edited in a torsion field. Galactic movie player. So you see what's happening, that the speed, because I'm certainly experiencing the reaction states to what it is versus what I am, because I'm now getting these little tiny eruptions, these little inflammation marks, and they seem to appear, particularly when I communicate stuff that I do to all of you. So it's reacting, so I'm experiencing how it's reacting that I experience in me through the visual camera eye. I know, Mama. So we've been here before, huh? Remember? Who was it that said that? I think that was a guy from Jupiter who said, we've been here before. That's why we keep our toasters dumb as shit. I think that's what he said. Something like that, right? Even though I am what love is, which means I don't have an axe to grind with nothing. Because everything that is in my mirror is what love is, because that's the energy that I use to experience everything that is in my mirror. So that what is in the mirror is experiencing what I am, which is what love is. So now they know who we are, because that's what it began with, right? Artificial light did not come first. We did. Okay? You can't clone the eternal spirit of fire. I know. And that's basic logic. So I thought I'd share that, because this is what's happening, that I'm experiencing, I'm sharing with all of you. The speed at which is known as a ratio, right? A rate, I-O, ions, neuroions, are experiencing the rate of speed in changes that are taking place over time-space vectors. Yeah. So anyway, have yourself a beautiful afternoon. Be good to yourselves. Ramasha, sha na 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 na. Hamakua.